In our ongoing series, Climate Matters, we've been detailing how the changing climate has intertwined into our daily lives. Now, earlier today, we told you about how coffee is one of the crops most affected from warmer temperatures. That warming causing another crisis, the emergency on our southern border. Meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff explains.
For many farmers in the highlands of Guatemala, coffee was a way out of hardship. Land that had been in families' hands for generations and carefully cultivated is now being abandoned for a better way of life.
What most people don't seem to understand is one of the biggest drivers of migration, at least from Guatemala right now, is the coffee crisis.
Guatemala is now the single largest source for migrants attempting to enter into the United States. From October 2018 to September of 2019, over 263,000 were apprehended at the southern border.
The big dialogue is, how do we stop that? Well, how you stop it is A, coffee companies should pay more for the coffee so that people can stay on their land, and B, we've got to combat climate change. That's the root cause of this stuff. That's why those farmers are leaving.
A 2015 study found the changing climate is hurting coffee production. Rising temperatures have damaged beans, a lack of rainfall has led to drought, and a crop-killing fungus called La Roya has spread rapidly.
Farmers are faced with a real challenge. They really can't move their crop very easily, and they're faced with 3 to 5 years of no income if they have to move. But climate change is forcing them to move.
Climate change is not listed as something that makes somebody eligible for refugee status. Refugee status is limited to people who are able to show that they have suffered some kind of political persecution or violence targeting them as an individual.
Rebecca Hamlin is an associate professor of political science at UMass Amherst and an accomplished author and expert on immigration.
The really tricky part is that for many people it's probably a combination of factors. So climate change is certainly a big factor, changing conditions on the ground. Slowly but surely over time, making it harder for farmers, especially in Guatemala, for example, in the highland areas where their livelihood is based on certain crops that are harder and harder to grow. So those slow changes over time put economic pressure on communities, which is also linked to political factors. So you're more likely to see political violence and corruption in a place that's suffering economically, and economic factors are tied to climate. So it's all really interwoven and hard to separate it out into just one factor.
Hamlin says migration to the U.S. border is usually a last resort.
They are displaced internally within their countries before anywhere else, and many people stay displaced internally to their country or to their region and never make it to our border. So I think if we see a crisis at our border, it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of how many people are being affected by economic depression, climate change, and political violence.
For Western Mass News, I'm meteorologist Jacob Wyckoff.